My Best Friend, The Narcissist, a novella by Desi Sadai of the Brown Ajah. In all seriousness, though, this is more of a journaling exercise. I might delete or put it on private later. This has to do with a friend I've known for about a year now. And let's just say it's been a tumultuous but very rewarding at the same time sort of relationship. It started out on a dating app. I've complained about dating apps extensively, but this one actually worked to my benefit. And even though I have been through literal hell, and I have been extremely stressed out and extremely agitated, I find myself near the terminus of this whole event in better mental shape than I've probably ever been in my life. Because this is a lengthy story, and I was initially going to just rant for about 15 minutes, but it turned into a full-on, multi-page document of notes, I'm going to do this in chapters. And the first chapter is going to be called Origins. As many of you might know, my story with online dating has been pretty terrible. I, as an ace person, have had very limited success outside of making a few really close friends, and CC happened to be one of them. I'm not going to use this person's name, obviously for confidential reasons, and I still deeply care about this person despite the flaws. Note at this time, when I met CC, I was very desperate for friends, and I actually wrote a podcast episode on how horrible online dating apps are, so that's a reference if you can find it in my channel. But yeah, it's been terrible. People don't know how to talk anymore, how to communicate, they ghost. There's a billion stories on this website itself, so I'm not going to go into detail about it. My best friend at the time was in Germany, so I really had no support network outside of my family. But when I met CC, or I should say when I started corresponding with CC, the conversation went extremely well. These were long-form conversations back and forth, extremely rewarding. This is what I've been looking for. And after all these horrible experiences with these flakes and people who don't know how to socialize properly, this was a big change of pace. After about a month of correspondence, I finally met this person. And when I meet somebody new, even if it has, if it's on a dating app or whatever, I don't call a first meeting a date. Because I feel like date has a connotation and expectation to it, and I don't want expectations in these situations. They're basically friendship interviews for me. When I met CC, the first thing that happened was, of course, CC had brought her dog, and we ended up going to a park, and we had a nice long walk, and that was the first yellow flag that happened, is I was talking to this person, but she was so focused on her dog, and the dog was not very good on the leash. I've seen worse dogs, but this was not very good, and also it had basically very little regard for personal space. It would jump up on people. It's basically an untrained dog at the end of the day. But we ended up going out in the river. I took my shoes out and walked in the river. It was a 90-degree day in September, late August. And I walked out skipping rocks, and there were people fishing. And the dog walks over to them, and CC freaks out because she's worried the dog's going to jump on them. And it's okay, we need to go. And despite the fact that I was still in my bare feet, she's like, we need to go. We got to go, Desi. We got to go. We need to get out of the situation. I had to walk up the trail in my bare feet, which I ended up getting pretty beat up because it's a primitive dirt trail. And if CC took no notice that I was walking in my bare feet, just completely disregarding my situation. And I'm willing to give some slack there because CC might have just not noticed. But when I was like, hey, can we slow down a little bit? Those people are half a mile behind us. We don't need to keep just at this ridiculously fast pace. My feet are getting hurt. I'm in my bare feet. And it wasn't oh, are your feet okay or anything else like that. It was just okay. And I thought that was very strange initially. Are your feet okay? Are you okay? That's a long way to walk. I'm sorry. Nothing like that. Just completely disregarding the fact that I had to walk at a quarter of a mile on my bare feet. But I let it slide. Maybe they didn't notice. Maybe she didn't notice. So the next time I met Cece, it was at her house. And it's not something that's typical like on a second encounter for me. Usually it's in another public place or whatever. I've been on like plenty of encounters where female bodied people are like, hey, I don't want to meet in like a private path in the woods or whatever, because I like to go on nature walks or whatever. That's always my first suggestion. But I get why somebody doesn't want to go with a 6'2" male-bodied person like myself into the middle of the woods. I understand. But on the flip side, it's like, oh, we're going to go to your house. That's interesting. And this time I hadn't taken like romance and dating off of the table. I never really have that expectation, but like I always keep it in the back of my mind if I'm compatible with somebody, although having to walk a quarter of a mile on my bare feet over blackberries wasn't so great. So the first thing that happens when I get to Cece's house is I knock on the door, ring the doorbell, and there's no response. And then finally Cece comes, but she's holding the dog, who is having an absolute conniption fit, like completely out of control. And I'm like, do I really want to come into this S show? Like, and it was in her foyer area, and the dog is just completely just like running around in circles. She's trying to keep it under control. I know she's had guests before this, so this struck me as a little bit odd. Like, why wouldn't you just put your dog in another room or put it in the back porch? It was very strange. And also Cece doesn't believe in like tying dogs up. She thinks it's like animal abuse, which I guess in its own right is respectful for the animal. But at the same time, this dog is also not respecting my boundaries, because when I come inside, the first thing the dog is just like completely maul me, like jumping on me, getting my clothes dirty. I had nice clothes on, getting my clothes dirty. It was pretty stressful, but I was like, you know what? Okay, whatever. This dog obviously has like a history of abuse or whatever, not from Cece. Cece actually did a good job of like, well, a decent job, I should say, of like getting the dog out of a bad. It was a rescue dog, and it left better than it came there. So I'm not going to discredit Cece there. But yeah, the dog had no regard for my personal space and got my nice clothes all dirty. And did I get an apology from Cece about my clothes getting dirty and my shirt getting ripped? No. But you know what? I should have, in my mind, like, oh, I should have done something different. This is my fault, because that's what I do. I always blame myself for these sorts of things. But more or less, it was an issue of me accommodating this dog. And that would become a theme, accommodating. Remember that term going forwards here. So when I got to Cece's house, I ended up just doing a bunch of work. Her backyard was a complete mess. And she's like, oh yeah, here's my backyard. I'm going to work on my shed. I got a lot of stuff in my shed that I need to clear out from the last person who left it in there. And you can just, watch me work and chat, but I'm going to be working. But also, yeah, look at this backyard that's a complete mess. And you said you really like doing yard work. So, you don't have to work, but here's this mess of a yard. And of course, I just go like full head on, just going at this yard. And mind you, this yard had not been mown in years. There were blackberries. It was a complete mess. And I did a miracle job on it by the end of it. Like, I was very happy with what I did. I mowed it, pulled out all the blackberries. It looked like a park when I was done with it. And that's not me exaggerating. That's not me flexing or anything. I just really like doing yard work. I live on a farm. I do it out here. But yeah, I thought it was a bit strange that on our second and third encounters, it was essentially a work crew. And it wasn't really me getting... I did get to know the person later on. And the third night, I actually spent the night there, if you can believe it. But despite it being a work crew, I was like, you know what? I need new friends. If this is what I have to do to make new friends, if I have to, work 4 or 5 hours a day on this yard to make a new friend, then so be it. This person obviously needs the help. On the third night, we ended up going out to dinner after working, and I learned that Cece had been single for a while now and was out of a long-term toxic relationship that had ended with a narcissist. Funny, the term of the video, and that she dated a narcissist and everything else. But this person had emotionally abused and damaged her. I felt bad. That's another thing too. I felt very bad for this person. I felt protective, and I want to make this person's life better. And I still feel that way. That's just who I am. The day that I spent the night was the third encounter, and I really could have made a romantic move, but it did not feel right to me. And there were suggestions by like, oh yeah, I'll even sit next to you. Cece has a big thing with personal proximity. And so for her, we were having dinner, like, oh yeah, we're going to sit next to each other on the couch. I'll sit next to you. For that close proximity, for me, it was just like, okay, well, if I'm going to make a move, then I make it tonight. But I never really wanted to. I never felt it. I never felt the energy or the chemistry. I just was like, let's just have a good conversation and drink some wine. And that's more or less what we did. We watched the movie and we went to bed. It was all peachy keen. So a couple weeks after we had met and had our first encounters, we ended up going to Eastern Washington. She'd never been to Eastern Washington, despite being here for like, I think 2 or 3 years. She has not explored the state. Cece is a workaholic, something I admire greatly about her, but also like I'm trying to get her to like go out and do things in the wild, because all she does is work, because she has $300,000 in student debt and a $400,000 mortgage. And despite making like close to 6 figures, she can barely like scrape by every month. And so I'm just like, I need to make this person's life better. I feel so bad. This person's been through so much. And I'm like, I want to have her explore with me this beautiful state that we live in, Washington State. And she ended up driving and said, okay, you're going to be a passenger princess, because I know your driving style would drive me nuts based on like your personality and your passivity and everything else like that, or your passiveness. I wanted to stop several places, but of course I had no agency in this because I was the passenger. She like drove down a long ass dirt road, like to this campsite. And it's just like, I was like, where the frick are we even going? And mind you, this is somebody who has no idea like how to read a map or anything. She just uses GPS. And this is not an insult. A lot of people are like that. My best friend's like that. I'm a map nerd. So when I go to these places, I know exactly where we're going, and I know where she was going was the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, we're gonna like come across like a freaking meth lab in the woods and get shot or something like that. But it's whatever. It ended up working out. But what really drove me nuts during that trip is White Pass, which is US 2, I think it's US 2 or US 12 that goes across the Cascades, was closed because they were doing road work. And I was like, hey, you see that sign? We're going to have to find a detour. There's no way we're getting around this unless we go back. And Cece just completely ignores me and said, you know what, let's just see. Let's just see what happens at the roadblock. Maybe there's a way we can get around. And I'm just like, there's literally no way we can get around. It's a mountain pass, unless you want to drive straight up the mountain. Like, there's no way to do it. And just completely ignores me. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to let this slide. But this is a recurring thing, mind you. This is, I believe, her testing my boundaries and how far she can push me. Because I think this person knew she was wrong. There's no way around. But how far can I push Desi before he gets upset or lashes out or tries to check me? And mind you, Cece knows that I'm a geographic expert and I know how to read maps and know all the roads were. But she's intentionally disregarding me. And we get up to the roadblock and sure enough, there's no way around. And, you know, if I was a snarky person, I'd be like, you know what, I told you so, why didn't you listen to me? I'm just like, instead I just kept quiet, shoved it under the rug. This is something that I would keep doing, shoving under the rug, shoving under the rug, shoving under the rug. And as of like a couple days of this video, that shoving under the rug that I've constantly been doing has finally reached a boiling point, but I'll get to that later. At this time, of course, every time I go to her house, it's the same song and dance with the dog. I knock on the door. Of course, Cece doesn't come and say, oh, hi, Desi, nice to see you. It's, okay, wait, don't come in yet. Don't come in yet. I need to get the dog settled down. Don't come in yet. Nope, don't pay attention to the dog. Don't pay attention to the dog. Wait. It's not like, never, hi, how are you doing? Never to greet me. Cece only started greeting me like a couple of weeks ago after she rehomed her dog, oddly enough. Like, it's like I'm a freaking mailman or a worker coming to her house. Literally, that's what I was, because that's pretty much like 60% of what I did when I was over there was working her freaking house and lawn. But yes, every time I would come to the house, my personal space was violated by her dog. The dog was never restrained, never put in a different room. It was always, I need to accommodate this dog's behavior, and it's my fault if I get jumped on. I was basically told that if I'm sitting down and like reading a book or on my phone and the dog comes over and tries to get in my lap, and mind you, this is a pit bull mastiff breed. This is a 70-pound dog trying to get in my lap. And if I'm on my phone or I'm reading, I need to get up and stop what I'm doing and walk away. I need to accommodate this dog. Mind you, while I'm accommodating this person by working 4 to 5 hours every time on her lawn and house. So this is all about accommodation. And of course, I sweep it under the rug because you know what? I need friends. This person's talked to me. This person is really fun to be around. Not in these situations, obviously. We have a good time. We tell jokes. And this person offers me really good conversation. We'll talk until like 1 o'clock in the morning. But I believe this accommodation for her dog was just another method of testing my boundaries and seeing how far I would be pushed until I pushed back. At this point, I started to build a fair amount of resentment that I just continuously shoved down. I obviously didn't let it surface because, hey, I need new friends. I need friends. My social circle was limited at the time with my best friend moving to Germany. So I was the patron saint of tolerance, and I am a very tolerant person, but even me having to work 4 to 6 hours a day on this endless home renovation was starting to wear me down a bit. And that's another term, wearing down. Tolerance, wearing down, and accommodation. Those are 3 big words in this whole thing. So I thought a bit about a chapter name for chapter 3, and I think creating chaos is the best I can do because that's really what it was. And the context for this is Cece had been dating a man for a while. And mind you, Cece has a very, very select group of people that she wants to date that have to have like dark hair, have to be above 6 foot, have to have a full head of hair, and have to be providers, and also have to be on the progressive side of politics. Basically a unicorn. I'm not saying there aren't men like that, but when you're 35 and single, a lot of them are taken up. And I'm not saying settle. By no means. I'm not going to settle. I don't expect her to settle either. But it's still a kind of a unicorn. And also, like, on top of all that, has to be masculine, presenting, and confident. And to me, that just, it seems ridiculous. But you know what? Everyone has their type. And who am I to judge standards? But anyway, her and this gentleman had had a conflict of sorts. And Cece had always been like, oh, I can't really visit your house because of time accommodations. I can't come and visit you because of this and that and this and that. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, hey, me and this person had a conflict. Can I come over and visit? Which I thought was kind of peculiar. It was completely out of the blue. I was out painting fences in my paint clothes. I had freaking black stain and oil all over me from petting the fence posts. And this was on the family farm. But anyway, Cece comes and visit, and I was at the family farm. I was like, oh, this is perfect. My mom and dad, my mom is a horse trainer. So 20 acres, the farm that she lives on, and my dad had broken his hip like a year and a half prior. So she didn't have the energy to like take my dad to appointments and take care of him, and also take care of 20 acres in summertime. I guess this was fall time by the time this had happened. But of course, Cece decides to bring her dog because, of course, Cece brings her dog everywhere, and it's my job to accommodate her dog who, despite causing drama and getting up in people's business, not just me, she jumps on everybody. She insists on bringing her dog because her dog has separation anxiety and can't leave her home. But yes, a oddly impromptu visit for somebody who says that she can never make it out, and a very strange reason to come out when she's having a conflict with the person she's dating. Cece insists that I bring the farm dog, my dog, that was there. I raised this dog, and it lives with the farm because there's deer and everything else on the ranch. And Cece insists that Nina come down to the lake in the developments and come play with Piper to help Piper calm down. And I was like, all right, whatever. Like, she has no right to tell me to bring my dog down to calm her dog down. But I was like, you know what? Okay, if that's what Cece wants, I'll accommodate that. And they're playing, and they're out in the lake and everything else. It's actually a really fun time. And Cece is throwing the stick for Piper and Nina, and they're going out in the lake. And I'm finally getting Nina dried off, and I took my car down to bring Nina down to the lake. Right before I'm ready to put Nina back in the car, she throws the stick out in the lake again, and the dog gets soaked again. And at that point, I was just like, are you freaking kidding me? You know I'm trying to get the dog dry, and you throw the stick out into the lake again. Like, and like Cece says that she's on the spectrum, which I kind of do believe, but like, I really feel like that was just, again, another thing of pushing my boundaries and wearing me down just to screw with me. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. It's just, this is very common behavior. This isn't a one-off thing at this point. But anyways, Cece is like, oh, don't worry. I'll bring Nina back up with me. And I was like, she's not going to like being separated from me and being in a new car in a new situation. But of course, me being me, I accommodate. So we're driving, and about 2 minutes later, Cece stops. And I'm like, why is she stopping in the middle of the driveway? It's a short drive back to the lake. My dog had freaking jumped out of her window while the car was moving. Like, she had left the window like halfway down, and my dog wanted out because she saw me up ahead, and I was obviously staying within sight of my dog and my car. My dog freaking jumped out of a moving freaking car, and she had left the windows down. And I was petrified that my poor baby dog, my poor baby girl, was hurt. And, of course, Cece acts completely clueless. Didn't apologize or, like, she just was like, oh, I can't believe she did that. I can't believe she did that. Like, you left the window down, and I told you that my dog would be nervous if she didn't see me. And the only reason my dog is in your freaking car is because you threw the stick out into the lake. Like, this isn't freaking astrophysics. And mind you, Cece is a very smart person. I would say almost genius level. And to do this, again, I think is just pushing my boundaries to see how far she can screw with me, to know what the limits and how she can. I think it's a game at this point. But of course, back then I was just like, oh, harmless mistake. It's fine. It's fine. You know, it's like the house burning and the dog saying it's fine when it's my quote-unquote friend constantly screwing with me and pushing boundaries, and I just put up with it. But yeah, my dog fortunately wasn't hurt, but I did not get an apology. And in fact, I don't think I've ever heard Cece utter the words, I'm sorry, in my entire life. But let it slide. She made an effort to come out see me, right? Didn't matter that she was having a conflict with her dating partner. She came out and saw me. That's all that matters. I need more friends. I need to accommodate. So after we get back to the farm, I settle the dog out, and Cece takes Piper out of the car to go walk her around to kind of cool her off. And she asked me if it's okay to take Piper off the leash. And I was like, that's probably not a good idea. There's chickens, there's cats, and there's horses here. And Cece just like basically badgers me and says, no, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. She needs to be off the leash. She needs to calm down. Or she needs to be off the leash. She's been on the leash long enough today. You know, the dog is more important than everything else, and more important than me by any means. I, of course, concede. And the first thing the dog does is chases the cats and sees one of the horses and makes a beeline for it. And despite Cece calling for the dog to come back, the dog completely ignores her, goes out in the pasture, starts chasing the horse. My mom's freaking horse, mind you. My mom's horse that she spends like thousands of dollars a year to train, and their investments. And those of you who know about the equestrian market know how expensive vet bills are, and this freaking dog is chasing the horse around the pasture. Fortunately, this horse is one of the more patient horses that we've had. If it was the other horse on the farm, it would have put the horse through the fence. And the horse is kicking at the dog, and Cece is standing there like a deer in the headlights while this is going on, refusing to go into the pasture, just trying to get her dog to come back. Like, oh my God, she's going to get trampled. She's going to get trampled. And not trying to go get her dog, but just calling her and hoping that this dog, who is completely ignoring her, is actually going to come back to her. So I have to freaking go out there and try to catch her dog. And eventually she comes out after I'm running around. Like, I nearly got freaking trampled because the horse is freaking out. And, oh my God. I mean, I can't believe that I didn't call her out right there and lay into her. Like, this was ridiculous. Like, absolutely boneheaded decisions. And I know she's not stupid, but like leaving the window down where my dog can jump out and then letting her dog off leash to go chase horses when she knows her dog has no recall. I can't say that it's not intentional. I think this is just screwing with me. But I can't emphasize how dangerous this situation was for the horse and her dog. The only reason why her dog stopped chasing is Prisma, the horse, kicked at her and nicked her. About this far from her freaking head. Got her in the shoulder, but an inch over and that dog would have been dead. So after all this happened, my mom was obviously freaked out, but my mom went inside and was like, okay, Desi's going to handle this. It's fine. I need to not get upset about this. And by the way, kudos to my mom for being like, I don't want to be in this. This is a bad situation, but I know that my child is going to handle this as he always does, and everything's going to be fine. That's a lot of trust in me. And I did handle it. Cece was basically more or less useless in this situation, just staying outside, refusing to get in the pasture and try to get her dog. But do you think that Cece apologized for her dog nearly putting my mom's horse through a fence? No. And I feel really bad. Instead, Cece just rationalizes the decision and was upset that the horse responded the way it did. And did I call her out for it? You already know the answer. I need more friends. I just need to accommodate this. I'll take what I can get. Chapter 4, The Hike from Hell. And this really was a hike from hell. Despite it starting off really fun, it ended up being a nightmare. It basically started out with us, going on a day adventure. Of course, I do my mandatory 4 hours of work before we can do anything fun. That was part of the deal. I do work at her house, and then we get to do something fun afterward, like go hiking. So she's like, it's like feeding a toddler candy after they do chores. That's literally what she's doing to me. So anyway, of course, the dog comes with us because the dog comes everywhere, especially when I'm involved. The dog is a challenge to my patience, and it is a tool to realize how far I can be pushed and how far my boundaries can be pressed. And Cece, of course, when we get on the trail, is like, oh, I'm going to take the dog off leash, because it was like December, it was up in the mountains, so it was very unlikely we were going to run into anybody. But the dog's just running all over the place and everything else like that. And I was like, okay, well, this is fine. Hopefully we don't run into anybody. We're going back to the parking area after our hike. Piper is kind of, staying a distance ahead of us and going off sniffing around, and also like if there was a deer or something else like that, that would have been a huge problem. And I advised that, and I was like, maybe it's not a good idea to keep the dog off leash, but the dog's cooped up all the time. We're going to keep her off leash. That's just what we're going to do, because that's how Cece does things. So as we're heading back to the parking area, a lady comes with 2 other dogs, and of course Piper's off leash, and this lady sees Piper, puts her dog over the side, and then realizes Piper's off leash and starts to panic because this is a pit bull mix, and Piper has a very pit bull head. And this lady starts screaming as Piper starts jumping up on her, not in an aggressive way. And of course, her little dogs, who are like, I don't know, there's some smaller breed, they sense that their owner's in danger and they start snapping and lashing out at Piper. It was such a traumatic experience. This lady starts screaming because this is a horrible situation. And Cece goes, jumps on her dog, corrals her, puts a leash on her. This lady's like crying and upset. And Claire just tells her to basically F off. And this Claire's like, what's your name? I need to know your information. I can't believe you had your dog off leash or whatever. And Claire's just like, F off. And unfortunately, I told the lady to F off too, because I thought she was being a Karen. And of course, I was taking Cece's side. I feel terrible about that. I really do. And like, the lady did not handle the situation to her best of ability, but also like a pit bull mix was coming at her with no leash. She didn't know. It was probably I would be nervous in her shoes. And Cece screwed up in this situation. And also, like, she was trying to get her dog, trying to get Piper under control, get her leash on her. And then she freaking yells at me to go get her hat. And then afterwards, she's like, you really needed to be faster in that situation. You didn't get going fast enough. You lingered too much. I'm just like, so it's my fault now? Like, you're mad at me because of a situation that wasn't even my fault. And I just was like, I didn't say anything, because you know what? I need friends. Slide it under the rug, whatever. That's what CC thinks. Maybe I did screw up. And as we're leaving, this happened too on the way there. The path or the trail was on this old logging road, or Forest Service road. And those of you who know, who have done any hiking around here, the Forest Service roads have a lot of potholes, and they're not maintained by the county or the state necessarily. And she's driving like a freaking maniac out of there because she thinks that this old lady is somehow going to catch up to us and get her license plate and report to the police or something like that. And she goes flying across the bridge, and I know there's a giant pothole on the other side of the bridge, and I'm like, Cece, we need to slow down. The danger's gone. And she's like, it's not for me to determine. This is my car. And that right there was the first red flag. I was just like, whoa. And if this is me right now, if I were to snapshot myself back then, I'd say, you need to let me out of the car. You're making me feel unsafe. And I did feel unsafe. I feel very unsafe when CC is driving. CC is a reckless driver. Probably more so with me in the car. Also, I want to get to another point. CC has her dog on a leash all the time. But when I'm with CC, the dog is off leash. And at this point, I am experiencing fatigue. I am just uncomfortable all the time. My boundaries are constantly being pushed. And I'm tired. I don't have the energy to push back against CC anymore. And CC does just enough in terms of giving me what I want in terms of social companionship and an occasional compliment thrown in here and there to keep me content, but also realizing that I'm worn down and that there's more and more that I'm going to tolerate going forward. Because this is not normal behavior. I've had many friendships before that have come and gone, and this one by far is the one that I feel the most like kind of built up resentment. Although I had another male friend a handful of years ago who did the same crap, more or less. Different scenario though. So at this point, we've reached the final chapter, and at this point I think I'm done telling the long-winded stories. And I just kind of want to bullet point a couple of things to really kind of drive the point. Because at this point, I'm fatigued. I have a building resentment that I can't ignore anymore. And the first real red flag that started setting me on the course that I'm at now is she had a neighbor called Dee Dee, who is a alcoholic, smoker, 3 DUIs, can't legally drive, but drives to the grocery store to get booze anyway, is not really employed, has spent all of his money that he does get on alcohol and maintaining his destructive habits. So as we're driving home from a walk one day with the dog, of course, Cece was explaining how her partner at the time was jealous that I was hanging out with her so much, basically. And she said, he was also jealous of her neighbor, Dee Dee, the alcoholic smoker who doesn't have a job. And she said, well, you and Dee Dee are literally the last people I would ever sleep with in my entire life, on the world that I would ever sleep with. And I'm just like, you're comparing me and putting me in the same bracket as Dee Dee, who is a low-functioning alcoholic, who has a wet cough and probably has early stage lung cancer, who has 3 DUIs, has no prospects, and who is basically on a course to poverty or homelessness or just dying outright. That really upset me. You know what I did? I laughed it off. But I was talking to my friend about this last night, and my friend was just like, what? That's horrible. And that was her way to assure her partner. And she literally told me that and didn't think that that would upset me. Again, this is conscious. Cece is not a stupid person. This is conscious screwing with me. Because at this point, Cece knows that she can push and do whatever the frick she wants and say whatever the frick she wants. And I'm just going to nod my head and laugh and smile. So you might expect after like 100 hours of yard and lawn work, which I could probably charge $20 to $30 for if I were to put it on paper, so thousands of dollars of labor. When we go out to eat after a day's work, she might compensate me and pay for dinner. Nope. Never once. Actually, no, I think she bought me a burrito once. I take that all back. You know what? My whole point doesn't count anymore. But 90% other percent of the time it was, oh, I don't feel like cooking tonight. I don't want to make food tonight in the house. Let's go out. Oh, but you need to pay. Despite me being low on cash in situations. But oh, mind you, she doesn't have money to pay for gas to come out to my place because it's always me going up there. And she doesn't have money to pay for a lunch every now and then, but she has money to spend us on a $600 refrigerator, a new headboard, and squeaky toys and dog toys that every time she goes to grocery outlet, she buys for her pets. And by the way, the dog she doesn't even have anymore, but even though when she's getting rid of the dog, she still is buying her squeaky toys and toys. But she doesn't have $8 to come out and spend gas to come visit me. Am I stupid? And I knew that was BS, but of course, you know what? I'm going to accommodate. I need friends. I'm going to put up with it. She did eventually come to the family farm again, because I was helping my mom, and I invited her. This was after I got back to Taiwan with my other best friend. And of course, Piper comes too. Mind you, Piper comes, and she doesn't ask if her dog can come, by the way. She doesn't check with my mom, despite like her dog literally chasing and almost putting her horses through one of the fences. She doesn't ask if it's okay to bring her dog. She just brings her dog. I'm actually getting legitimately triggered bringing this up again. I thought it was over this. So, of course, the dog comes and keep her in the apartment. Thankfully, there's no horse incident again. But Cece decides, as we're hanging out inside, that Piper needs to be included. And it's my mom, me, my dad's in the hospital. It's my mom, me, and Cece. So we bring the dog in. The first thing my dog does, or her dog does, is jump up on my mom. So, okay, we need to reintroduce, calm her down a little bit. And Piper was better the second time around, but she still tries to get my mom's lap. My mom, it's 11 o'clock at night. She's had a long day. She's worked. She's trying to enjoy her glass of wine in her evening. And the dog gets in her lap. And then the dog knocks the wine glass over later, by the way. Right in the carpet. I had to clean it up, of course. Do you think Cece apologized for that? No. In fact, what Cece did, my mom got upset with her dog, and said, I don't like the way you're treating my dog, and got mad at my mom, walked her dog over into the corner of the living room and started crying because she felt my mom rejected her dog. If that's not narcissistic / sociopathic behavior, in my mom's own house, I don't know what is. Like, that is not normal behavior. And of course, I take Cece's side. I didn't like get mad at my mom or anything, but I'm just like, you got to treat the dog like a toddler that she just doesn't know or whatever. And not the fact that like Cece didn't ask my mom if the dog could come over, brings her in the house, and then gets upset and my mom rejects her dog. So Cece leaves the next morning without saying goodbye. We're apologizing to her mom, or my mom, for her dog knocking over her wine and jumping on her in her own freaking house, in her own living room. And my mom comes to me the next morning and says, Desi, what's Cece's number? I want to call and apologize and make this right. And my mom does, and they have a conversation, but my mom goes like, yeah, it was a fine conversation, but Cece never apologized to me despite me calling her and despite what happened last night. Don't you think that's a little bit odd? I'm just like, that's just how she is. She's stressed out. She's busy with work and everything. She blah, blah, blah. Just making excuses and making excuses. And also that night after we got done, we took Piper out for a walk after this incident with the dog, and Cece looks over me. She says, "Your mom is emotionally unintelligent." And I'm just like, I didn't agree with her then, because I'm like, that's my mom. Like, I love my mom. My mom is like my rock. And you're having the gall to call my mom emotionally unintelligent after your dog just came over and dumped her wine over and jumped on her in her own house when she's trying to relax at night. And when she's dealing with my freaking dad in the hospital with a freaking rotting hip. I'm actually livid. And I can't believe that I didn't just fall down at my mom's feet and apologize for this. Apologize for my freaking friend who caused this whole situation in the first place. Also, at this point, I was really swamped with my work, and I wasn't able to come. Cece always slotted me to come in on a Friday, and I'd come basically almost every Friday. And I got swamped with my work, and I was tired. And also, I was doing a lot of work helping my mom out. You know, yard labor, putting fence posts in, and everything else like that for the horse farm. And I started showing up a little bit later because I'm just like, I'm tired. I don't want to work. And like, why would I want to go over? This is supposed to be my day off to spend with my friend, and all Cece wants me to do is go over there and work. And so I finally said, and I got a long text saying, you need to show up at 10 o'clock. You used to show up at 10 o'clock. Why aren't you showing up at 10 o'clock anymore? I'm like, is this a freaking job? And eventually I got to the point, I was like, you know what? I'm done. Like, I even said, like, I'm burnt out. And it wasn't I understand, Dizzy. Like, I completely get where you're coming from. Cece started crying and saying that how she wanted to jump off a cliff every day. More or less that's what it got to. And that everything she touched turns to SH you know what. Like King Midas in reverse. Everything she touches turns to S. And she starts crying. And of course, I move over to comfort her. She looks up and says, I cannot be touched. And this is what led me to where I am now. Actually, there's one more thing that kind of put me over the top. I invited Cece to come over for 4th of July. Cece's a dear friend. I wanted her to meet my grandma, who's 93. My grandma's one of the most amazing people in the world. I love my grandma to pieces. I'm so lucky to have her at 93. She is truly a blessing. And Cece is very special to me. So, you know, despite all this crap, and even saying this now about me being upset, Cece is still very special to me. And so, of course, before we go to my grandma's, who's like 2 hours away, Cece's like, well, you need to show up at 10 o'clock so we can get some work done before we go. So mind you, I have to drive over to Cece's and then to my grandma's, drive over to Cece's and get this work done, and then we can go to my grandma's. And Cece, of course, insists on bringing her cat with her now that the dog's gone. Because, of course, it's my job to accommodate her pets. Granted, with her cat, it ended up being fine. But, like, who the frick brings their cat to somebody else's family function? We spent the night there, too. Like, oh yeah, not only that, but my cat's gonna stay in your house. Oh my gosh, this is honestly cathartic talking about this. But, so we're doing our yard work and everything. We got our yard clothes on, and then gets ready to go to my grandma's. We drove separately, and then she comes out with what she's going to wear to the 4th of July party and staying overnight. And she wears an extremely tight top with a lot of midriff showing, extremely tight jeans. Like, she's a very curvaceous person, so she's showing off her form. And later, when we get there, because I was like, okay, whatever, wear what you want. I don't judge people on wearing anything. It's not me. Whatever. If you want to look good, go for it. More power to you. But as we're walking down to the party, and after she's met my grandma, she's like, do you think it's going to be an issue if I don't wear a bra? Or with me not wearing a bra? And I finally noticed that she wasn't wearing a bra. And Cece is one of those people, and she's told me this before, that she loves creating tension, especially sensual tension. I'm not going to use the other word because I don't want YouTube to knock the video down. She says that she loves being on her cycle, and that's why she wasn't wearing a bra, is because her breasts engorge or something like that. They look larger. And she wanted, obviously, and I talked to my female friend about this last night, my best friend, and she said, obviously, this was her wanting to show off, but I don't know why you would want to show off at a family function. And she's like, okay. I was talking to my other friend about it. It's like, imagine if I showed up in super tight jeans with my genitalia, like, bulged out. Or, like, super tight shorts with, like, one of my, something falling out of the short, like, super tight around my crotch. It's more or less the same thing. And that's what Cece chose to wear to my family function and meeting my 93-year-old grandma. And then she got confused and upset when my cousin called her out for not wearing a bra. And then called my family crazy. And from what I understand, this is like what Cece did with my mom and what she did with my family is kind of typical of the narcissistic spectrum of trying to isolate. I'm not sure of all the terminology. But anyways, we're at the end of July now, as of recording, and I can't hide the resentment that I feel any longer. And it's come to a head, and I eventually reached out to CC and said, do you really value me as a friend? Because I really feel like I'm walking around on eggshells with you. You don't really... You're not really warm around me. You're kind of cold and aloof, and I feel like you're just 1 second away from telling me to F off and leaving me. And it was actually a huge existential moment for me, and it's changed me fundamentally because I was chasing reassurance, and Cece was feeding it to me like a toddler when I did the right thing. I'd always have to ask for it, though. Like a toddler asking for candy after chores. But, like, I think I could count on one hand the amount of times Cece has said thank you to me. After a year of basically going out there every day to do yard work and free labor. So I'm really kind of in a weird state right now because I value my ability to go out and make friends now. I don't need to chase reassurance. This has been such a learning lesson. And I'm still processing all of this. And this is more about telling the story. But my life has changed fundamentally despite all this crap that I went through with this person. And who knows? We might reconcile, and I might take this video down or put it to private or something. Like I said, this was just meant to be a journal log, but I ended up talking with my friend for 4 hours last night about it. And here we are. But I was so desperate for friendship that I let all these red flags slip under the rug. And eventually it got so unbearable for me, even the patron saint of patience, me, that I had to address it. And I still haven't brought this forward to Cece. And I don't even know if I will. I don't know how Cece is going to respond to when I lay all this stuff down that I've explained in this video, in this journal. Because I don't know how narcissists work. And the thing is, I don't even know if she's like a true quote-unquote narcissist. It might just be that she has trauma. I'm sure she has trauma or whatever. I don't know. But there's a lot of things too. She doesn't have a big friend circle. Like, there's just so many things that line up from what I understand narcissists to be. That's hence the name of the video. My friend the narcissist. But anyways, I'm going to leave you all with that to process, kind of like the way I'm processing it now. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.